Rory, welcome to our podcast. We're so lucky to have you here in your role as Chair of Hull for Heroes. Do you want to start by telling us what prompted you to get involved with the charity?
Yeah, I suppose it goes back a few years. I got to know Paul Matson, who's the CEO of Hull for Heroes. Fantastic guy, full of enthusiasm. And he asked me some time ago, when he found out that I was a veteran myself, if I would join as a trustee. And at the time, I was still full-time as main board director at Rix Sons. And I was also president of the United Kingdom and Ireland Fuel Distributors Association. And I didn't really feel that I had any spare time to get involved in the charity. And then as soon as Paul read in the paper, I think, or saw wherever, that I was stepping back from being a full-time director at Rix, he was on the phone saying it would now be a good time to talk about joining the charity.
Oh, fantastic. Because people know you so well from your role at Rix, but I suppose that will have given you a lot of skills, especially in your role as chair, and in terms of how you use the charity's resources to their best advantage. Because we were talking about that prior to you coming in, about how you've done that and what you've done to make sure that they're deployed in the best way.
Well, I hope so. I mean, and I hope I'm not doing anyone there a disservice by saying that I joined this group of fantastically enthusiastic people who were the trustees and Paul, the CEO, and they knew an awful lot about the military and veterans' needs, and full of enthusiasm, were fantastic at delivering that, but less experience in actually being the leaders of organisations. So I think I've come in and I have a very different perspective to the one that they have. So I'm the one looking at, so what's our strategy and have we updated our policies and as Tim Rix would say, probably all the boring stuff, our finances and why don't we have monthly accounts and where are our budgets and all of this kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot I can bring in terms of structure and direction, better reporting, better accounting and other bits and pieces. Although the first thing I did was look at the board and think, well, we're all male, pale, stale, old gits who've been in the forces at some time. And it would be great, I think, for the charity if we could widen that out. So we advertised and we have some great colleagues who've joined, including one of your colleagues, of course.
Yes, Laura Fahey, yeah.
So we have Laura, who's a lawyer. We have Mike, who's come on board, who's an accountant. Emma, and another lady whose name escapes me at the moment. I'm rubbish at names. And it's brought a lot more balance and a lot more experience to the Board of Trustees.
We find that in our role, don't we? The boards who we advise that have the right mix of skills and experience, just in terms of different backgrounds, perspectives, are the ones that are able to come together collectively to really help drive the charity's mission. Mm-hmm. And how did you find the advertising process? Did you get a lot of responses?
We did, actually. But I think something you have to look at as a charity is why people are applying. Some people will be applying because they really buy into what you're doing, which is great, but what are they going to add as a trustee? And they maybe don't have the right background and experience, and you have to let those people down gently because it's disappointing for them that they're not the right fit. I think there are people who also apply because they think it'll be good for their own CVs. And that's not the right reason for the charity either. So it's finding something where it's the right reason for the charity and for them. Because I think that being a trustee and taking the time to get involved in an organisation also expands your knowledge and skills and experience in working in a different way to probably your day job.
Definitely. We find that, don't we? Mm-hmm. I'm a charity trustee, and I first got involved with the trustee board when I was 25, 26, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. But at the time that I got involved, it was a very traditional board. So we went upstairs, there was a huge board table, there was the chair at the end of the table, and we all called each other Mr. and Mrs. and Miss, and it was Deputy Chair, Mr. Chair. And it was very formal, and I'd never been to a formal board meeting before, because at that point I wasn't a partner in a law firm, I was just a newly qualified solicitor. And I found that experience quite daunting. And you do a lot of trustee training, don't you, Harriet?
Yeah, and board meetings, and they just vary so much depending on who's on the board and what type of charity it is. But we do a lot of trustee training on how to hold an effective meeting. We talk about it all the time. It sounds so basic when you say it, but it can really help. Just go back to basics and think, right, well, we've got the chair, and the chair leads the meeting. And then a good chair can really make a meeting more effective. A good agenda is really important. And that's the sort of thing we cover in trustee training.
It's that framework, isn't it? And I suppose, what's your approach as chair, Rory? Because every chair's different.
Well, I guess the board meetings at Rix have always been quite informal. That's the family way, who are the shareholders and directors in the business, but with a degree of structure and formality underneath that, as you'd probably expect. And I prefer that somewhere where it's a welcoming, pleasant environment. But of course, you do need to keep your focus and not end up having a bit of a tea party and a chat about what we've all been up to, but actually getting on with the agenda and the things that we need to focus on as a business or as a charity.
And I think as well, it's getting the best out of your people, isn't it, on the board? And I think that's what some really good chairs do. They're able to bring out the best in people, so everyone's able to make their contribution. Because like you say, one of your first tasks when you became chair was to look at the board and think, right, we need to get a different range of people on the board to bring different perspectives, to help us be a collective group of individuals who can each bring something different so the charity doesn't stagnate. And in the best meetings, everyone's voice is heard, because sometimes they can be dominated by one or two people.
Absolutely. And I think that actually for a lot of charities, when you have one person who's been there since it started or for a very long period of time as the chair or the CEO, that they can become very dominant. And I've seen that elsewhere in other organisations. And I think over the long term, that becomes unhealthy. However good they are to begin with, it can become unhealthy over the long term. I'm very fortunate in the company that I've worked for, which predominantly is owned by one person who certainly represents the shareholders. He has always been very open to challenge and questions from other people on the board, and a very open environment. And so I naturally think of that as being a healthy thing to be.
It is, isn't it? It's that healthy oversight and challenge, because when we spoke to Andy Barber, he said that he's, as a charity chief executive, he said it can feel quite good for a while when the board you go in, present something, and the board go, oh, yes, that's great. But he said after a while, it starts to get a bit uncomfortable.
It can feel like over-reliance on one person. And you think, oh, well, the chair knows what they're doing. We'll just go with the chair. But then there's not that proper oversight or challenge, which is a really good thing, especially if in future it turns out a decision maybe wasn't quite the right one to make, but you've got minutes that show there was proper challenge and justification for making a certain decision, and you've got the trustees backing for that. But if you've never had any challenge, then how can you know if the other options were going to be any better with the benefit of hindsight?
I quite like a good debate. So so encouraging people to ask questions and things. But what you don't want is a rubber stamping process where people turn up and just say, yes, tick, tick, tick. And
that's boring in a meeting anyway.
Absolutely. But there are so many ideas that can be refined. And I mean, we've got quite a lot of that going on at Whole for Heroes at the moment, where we've started to talk about the overall strategy and having a longer-term strategy and a fundraising strategy for the organisation, and then starting to think about what other events and other bits and pieces that we could do. And it's great the way that everybody in the trustees actually can add to this. And also looking at the trustees in terms of a couple of subcommittees, So looking at strategy and fundraising, and then looking at the other side, on the dustier side, maybe at sort of accounts and employment and that kind of thing.
Say dusty, but it's so important, isn't it? As you were saying before we came into the recording studio, you were saying about how the accounts are so important to enable the trustees to ensure you're discharging your duties and you're able to make those sometimes more difficult decisions about where you best target the charity's resources and how much it costs to help someone.
Yes, and I mean that's something that we can certainly, we're certainly looking to refine is what is the cost, but the help is that we offer is tailored to each individual. The needs of anyone coming in are so different, and some people come in with multiple needs. So they come in, it's not just a simple matter of they haven't got anywhere to live, but they haven't got anywhere to live. They haven't got a job, their finances are in chaos, they've got mental health issues, they may have addiction issues with alcohol and drugs. So you can't sit there and provide help in one of those areas and expect it to be a sticking plaster which is going to fix it. Nor can they come in on one occasion and it's tick, job done. This is a longer term process of support. And those needs change if the support process works. And you guys probably know more about this than me, but if you're homeless and you go into temporary housing and you get a job, you can't stay there for very long. So then you need to find somewhere else to go and live. And some of the people who come in, and the nature of the military is that, from what I've seen and read, being part of that organisation which provides everything from your meals, your uniform, your structure of your day, your timetable, a very defined rank and authority process, that doesn't cause chaos, but some people come from fairly chaotic backgrounds and all of a sudden they have that organisation and that camaraderie around them, and that goes when they leave. But also during their time in the forces, the nature of what the forces do mean that people may suffer physical or mental trauma, which then affects them greatly, and they don't have that brotherhood of people who naturally understand those challenges around them when they've left. And so working to help provide that structure and things is quite a challenge. We've got some great people in Hull for Heroes that do that really understand. And you've got to understand people's dignity and treat them with respect in that process as well. But they get angry easily and frustrated easily when it comes to dealing with bureaucracy. So we have people who can help them with the local authority, with getting GP services and getting through some of that bureaucracy and challenge, which we've all dealt with those things in our lives. But for them, it can seem insurmountable at times.
I guess I don't come from a military background and I don't have family members who do. And so it's delivering those types of services, but in the context of what your ultimate beneficiaries need. And coming from the ex-military community, their needs are very specific and also very complex and multifaceted, as you've alluded to. And so having people on the board, but also on the ground, delivering the services who understand what the people need and can talk to them about that must be hugely beneficial, as chair and also on the board to help you inform your decision making about your strategy.
Absolutely. And I mean, I believe that what Hull for Heroes do fantastically well is deliver those services. There are lots and lots and lots of military charities out there. And lots of organisations have some sort of service or support for veterans, but it's knitting all of those together. What there is a shortage of, and we'll perhaps talk shortly about Operation VALOUR, which is a big opportunity coming up, but what there's a lack of is that simple sort of walk-in, drop-in centre, that one point of contact where someone is going to help you access what you need and do it in a sympathetic and an empathetic way, to do that, and then be there for you after that first thing has been sorted, so that as your needs evolve, as that situation changes, that we're there to continue supporting it. And whether that's mental health support groups, and we run a couple of different mental health support groups, which are very popular.
That must be so beneficial to the people who really need it, having that drop-in centre where they can just go and speak to people who've been through the same experience. If you're just feeling so isolated, that must be massive help.
I think there's a sort of natural understanding between veterans. I mean, I think I can talk to someone and he tells me that they've served, and I could within minutes tell whether that was true or not. And it's a slightly different mindset. I mean, when you're in the armed forces, it is sort of 24/7. It's a whole way of life, and at times with a whole vocabulary of its own as well.
Speaking that language, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think that really shines through with Hull for Heroes for me, though, because although I'm not from a military background, locally in Hull and around Hull, the charity has such a strong reputation for its services, and just the level of community support you appear to have and behind you. It's fantastic to see the number of local businesses I've been to, and they've had one of your posters in there, or I've seen your truck driving around, and there seems to be so much goodwill and so much respect for what you do within the community, which is great.
And I think that's a big part of what I was just saying, that there is a real lack of somewhere where, as a veteran, you can just walk in and say, can someone help me sort this out? You know, I need help. And sit down and take them through the best places to access that. And of course, one of the other things about the military is that you move regularly from base to base as your job changes or your unit moves location at home and abroad. And the way our services in this country are set up is that you access those services through where you're based. But where are you based when you come out of the military? Is it where you grew up, or is it where you finished serving, or is it where your wife's family came from? And sometimes it's going into another area and being able to sort of get into that system and access those services in an area where you're perhaps primarily not eligible.
That's really interesting to hear. And I suppose looking to the opportunities, some of the biggest opportunities for a charity like Hull for Heroes, you mentioned Project VALOUR. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you see that fitting in?
Yeah, well, Project VALOUR is the new government veterans initiative, which I think was launched last year. And the closing date for bids is April of this year. And it's a £50 million initiative for support for exactly the sort of services. They're recognising the need that Hull for Heroes fills so well, which is that direct access to services, that immediate help, that somewhere where you can drop in and effectively have a counsellor, an advocate who's going to work with you to help you solve your problems. And £50 million sounds like a lot of money, but it's £50 million over, I believe, 3 years, over 10, 11 regions in the UK. And so we've bid for, because it's the only thing on offer, Yorkshire and the Humber. So Hull for Heroes isn't perhaps the right name any longer. And I mean, already we've been offering services in Bridlington and other places. So one of the other things we're looking at right now is Hull for Heroes quite the right name. Amongst the many, many changes that are going on for the charity right now, maybe even a name change is on the cards in the not too distant future.
And that could be more controversial than what you expect.
Well, yeah, easily, yes.
We spend quite a lot of time talking to the charity trustees about the name, because of how objects might change over time. Then the name can sometimes end up being something the charity used to do and not what it's doing now.
Well,
people can get very attached to the name.
So slightly going off Operation VALOUR, but yes, how can we change our name without losing our brand recognition in the community where it's so well established, and recognising the services that we provide and who we provide them for? So answers on a postcard, please. Not an easy one, so something we're thinking about at the moment.
That is a real challenge, I think.
It is, and there's that consultation really does need to take place, and sort of just checking that no one else out there, is what people's views are, what your service users' views are about the name, what does it mean to them, what makes them connect with the organisation the most. And absolutely, it's something that involves more work, I think, than people can anticipate at the outset, but in terms of Project VALOUR, and you explained bidding for funding, are you going through that process right now?
Yeah, we've put a bid in. When we've sat down and talked about it, it is difficult to see any existing organisation that fits the brief for Hull and the Humber, because it'll either be organisations that are bidding for it that don't have Hull for Heroes experience in terms of actually delivering that support and advocacy service, or alternatively, it'll be organisations like us that don't fit the geography. So quite who they're going to choose to provide these support centres. And already we've been working in other areas and also looking how we can work more in the rural community as well, which is going into smaller towns and villages, and whether that's church halls or libraries, but once a week, once a month, whatever it happens to be, having a mobile service that can set up there as providing the same sort of drop-in service, which is another great initiative. So, I mean, just lots and lots happening at the moment.
And I suppose we're so excited to get you on because you're so well known as well in the business community around here, and you've got so much experience in terms of boards and operations, and with your military background as well, it just makes you a really interesting character. And I know we haven't mentioned we were going to ask you this, but have you got any sort of key advice that you would like to share, I don't know, with aspiring charity chairs or business leaders out there, any sort of younger people coming up through the ranks?
Well, I was fortunate to be awarded recently an honorary doctorate by the University of Hull, which was very nice. So, in return for that, I bored all of the prospective graduates on the day waiting to receive their doctorates about the importance of and challenges of change, and that would be my main message. I mean, change for change's sake is something that can be expensive, damaging to your reputation, to your brand, lose the confidence of your employees. But actually, the world changes around us so quickly, whether it's the way communications and computing, but now with AI, the pace of change. And it's always discussing and being open to those ideas of change, how you meet the needs of your customers, who your customers are, and how you provide a better service and remain competitive. And I have a big belief that if as an organisation, whether it's charity, whether it's business, you're resolute and fixed in your approach to what you're doing, there's a gap that grows between the organisation that you are and the organisation that you could be, till eventually you risk becoming irrelevant, redundant for the people who use you. And so change and always refreshing things and looking how you can improve things is my main message.
I think that's really, really excellent advice, because change is something we can all struggle with from time to time. And I think that's a really strong message. So you mentioned, Rory, as well, when we were talking to you before you came in, about the power of partnerships and collaboration in charities.
I mean, I think that's absolutely essential. We certainly don't do everything that we'd like to do brilliantly well. We don't provide all of the services. We provide some of the services, and we're a pipeline for others, and a contact point, and someone who helps them get through. So it's important that we work on those partnerships, that we develop those partnerships with people who can help with providing accommodation, shelter through the local authority. So Hull City Council, for instance, we do a lot of work with. They're a great partner. There is someone in Hull City Council who coordinates veteran services, does a fantastic job doing that. So something that we're focusing on is how we make the most out of those partnerships and how we're a good partner for other people.
I think that's a really refreshing approach, isn't it? Because we're always encouraging the charities who we advise to look to collaboration wherever possible, particularly where there may be a gap, a service gap that they can't deliver themselves, but another local partner would be in an excellent position to assist with. And it can be, as you say, very powerful and help every organisation make the best use, not only of the knowledge and experience of its board, but its resources when they're so limited.
I think it can be overlooked that charities can partner with other charities as well, where they've got not delivering exactly the same services, but it might be complementary. So that's something for charities to keep in mind, I think, in addition to partnering with local authorities.
Absolutely, and something that we're quite focused on. I should also say thank you to you guys, because Wilkin Chapman Rollins is the only firm in the region, certainly in Hull, that has a charities division. And I know that, that's the service you provide as lawyers and what you charge for, but I also know how incredibly generous you are with your time and support and lots of stuff that you don't charge for in terms of helping charities and giving advice. And certainly for someone who's involved in a charity, we really appreciate that.
Thank you very much. And also thank you for doing this, because that's what we wanted to do, bring sort of people like you, Rory, in to talk about your experiences and help put our legal jargon in a practical context. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.